Dave, at the age of 14, you were diagnosed with type 2 bipolar.
Yeah.
Um, and with that, you suffered or had challenges with bullying at school, self-esteem issues, substance abuse, just name it. Even attempted suicide at some point.
Yeah.
Um, this is a time we're discussing a lot of mental health, especially with men. Um, can you just share that that period and that journey as a young teenager out there in the UK?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think I break it down into sort of two things: is the things that happened to me and the things that I did to myself, right? So, and you've mentioned bits and pieces of both there. The
Right.
bullying started at a very, very young age. It started because in the school I was in, it was one of the worst schools in the country, and not many people were quite. No one in that school wanted to be seen as bright or intelligent, but I liked knowing the answers to things. I always felt a bit of self-esteem coming from knowing the answers to things. So I'd put my hand up and answer questions in class. And bullies basically picked on me for the fact that I was making them look stupid. That would be one of the things that was often said to me all the time. I was also, my family were tremendously poor at the time, so I was picked on for not having the right clothes. Not like in the UK in schools we're in a uniform, so really it comes down to your jacket and your shoes. And in the 90s when I was in school, if you didn't have a Rockport jacket and kickers shoes, that was it. You were poor. And yeah, and also we had those really thick National Health Service glasses that nowadays are fashionable. I'm a little bit
Yeah,
envious when
yeah,
people put
yeah,
those at
yeah.
glass. One part of me wants to be like, yes, you go off, you enjoy those, and the other part of me is like, I was bullied for that. So the very first, so that was something that happened to me, and then juxtaposed with that is something I did to myself, which is I developed an eating disorder off the back end of that. I started comfort eating, which led on to binge eating, which became non-purge bulimia. Basically, so I would use food as a way to comfort myself, use food as a way to numb myself. Now, I categorize coping strategies as well, behaviors as two different things. I call them, I don't like the names negative behavior or positive behavior. I prefer to call them slingshots and boomerangs.
Mhm.
A boomerang, most of our bad habits are, well, what I would call a boomerang. A boomerang goes forward before it comes back. It gives you something positive before it takes away. So the food was the first boomerang for me. It would give me that feeling of comfort, that feeling of joy whilst I was experiencing it. But what it took back was it took back in terms of my health. It took back in terms of I was putting a lot of weight on, and the bullies had another thing to tease me off. It took back in the way that my own body image went through the floor, and it took back in the fact of actually I could say for the first two times or three times that I did it, I maybe thought I controlled the food. The food eventually controlled me. And that was kind of like the first thing. You mentioned a few of things like there about like the substance abuse. Alcohol came next as a way to deal with these things, as a way to let out. I have an absolutely giant personality, but I know, so I always probably had that giant personality. I didn't feel safe to let that giant personality out when I was younger. I was worried. I was brought up by two women, so I have a lot of feminine qualities to my personality. I can be really, really camp. It's like I always have this, like this joke that I'm going to kind of write a book one day called "Too Fabulous for Being Straight," but but basically, I couldn't let that side of my personality out, so I basically suppressed that. But when I drank, which was like sort of 15, 16 onwards, when I drank, that side of the personality was free to come out. We call him Diva Dave these days. But Diva Dave was a let out to play. But the problem was, again, that was another one of these boomerangs, because then I'd start to believe that the only way I can truly be myself is when I drink, the only way I can feel. But then I'd come down, I'd have hangovers, I'd be feeling worse, I'd start feeling more disconnected. And usually Diva Dave would go one or two steps too far in a night out. And the next day, I'm not one of those people that is blessed with the ability to forget drunken nights out. I remember every painful
Everything.
every painful detail. And also not the type of person to just shrug it off and go, oh well, I was drunk. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do last night? So while trying to feel more connected, I ended up feeling less connected.